one of the biggest games in the conference championship week is the SEC championship game between Georgia and Alabama. These are two teams that are at the top of the conference, and they have gotten here in very different paths. You look at Georgia, everyone expected them to be here. Everyone expected them to three-peat and win their third consecutive national championship. Alabama, everyone expected them to be here, I think, or mostly everyone did. And then a bump of the road kind of altered those plans. We'll start with Georgia. Georgia has been a lot different than we've seen in the last 2 years. This is a team that has not been as dominant as we've seen from the past two seasons. This is a team that still has some of that identity, but they have done things a little bit differently. They are more of a passing attack on offense. It's more of they don't really have an alpha on defense. They don't have that one guy that they rely on. They don't have maybe as much first round talent as they've had in the past. Yet they're still undefeated. And for the most part, there haven't really been too many challenges with this team. There haven't been a ton of close games. And I think that that's still an indicator of how good this team actually is. Now, there have been a lot more close games than we've seen in the past. This team has found ways to win. I think beating a team like Missouri, even though it was a 9-point win, that was a good statement win for them because that's the first of three ranked games that they played where they were able to win. And the next two games, they made stronger statements than that Missouri game. They also made a statement against Kentucky, the other ranked team that was on their schedule. They beat those teams in emphatic fashion. And I think that we're seeing a team playing with a lot more confidence. Like I said earlier this year, if you're going to beat Georgia, you have to do it at the beginning of the year for a lot of these teams. Now, a team like Alabama has a chance to win at the end of the year because they have the talent, they have the ability to do that. But for most teams, beating Georgia means you have to do it in the first six games. Since that didn't happen, it wasn't going to happen. There weren't too many teams. Maybe Missouri was probably the only one that had a legitimate chance of beating the Bulldogs. But then you have this Georgia Tech game, the 8-point win. I don't really know what happened there, but I think that you're still finding a team that's winning football games that is not phased by close games. And it's going to be a close game this weekend. So when you see that and you look at the talent they have, it's easy to see why they will be just fine in a close game against a talented Alabama team. Carson Beck has been really fun to watch. I think that he has grown in terms of confidence. I think he's making smart decisions. He's putting good zip on his throws. He has been a big reason why Georgia's been so successful. And I think that he has plenty of room to grow still, and that's good for Georgia. This is a great way to get him more involved. And honestly, I would be surprised if he's not back next year. I think that there's still plenty of room for him to grow, plenty of room for him to develop. And he gets a chance to do that against an Alabama defense that's going to be really good. Now, Georgia's defense, like I said, doesn't really have the alphas like a Jalen Carter or a Jordan Davis or any of those guys, but you have some talented players. Losing Jamon Dumas Johnson put Smail Mondon into a spotlight, even though I don't think it's as bright as it should be. Smail Mondon is an extremely athletic player who's great in space. He is a quick, he's able to get to the ball carrier. And I think that he doesn't get as much recognition as he deserves. Might not be the biggest linebacker. He might have to add some weight to his frame. But when you're looking at him in terms of being a playmaker, you are getting a lot of fun football from him, and you are getting him. He stepped up as a leader, and he has been a big reason why this defense has continued to be successful. Tyke Smith is another player that it fits into that mold. I think that Georgia has enough players to make this happen. And if you're Georgia and you win this game, it's because you just continue that trend of not getting bothered by close games. You don't make mistakes, and you find ways to win a football game. Now, Alabama's path to this point has been very different. And it wasn't looking good. I'm not going to lie. This is a team that has bounced back in a big way. And like I said, it was not pretty. We start with the Middle Tennessee game. That one was fine. I don't think you have any concerns with a 56-7 win. There's nothing that raised any alarm bells for what was about to happen. Texas came into Tuscaloosa and beat Alabama by 10, 34-24. And I think some people wondered if this was the end for Nick Saban. Maybe this is the year that we finally see them struggle and they send Nick Saban off in disappointing fashion. And the week after did not do much to negate that. You benched Jalen Milroe, which to me was the worst thing you could have done. When you look at the Texas game, Jalen Milroe made a handful of mistakes. Two of them were big mistakes. But the one thing that he did, which I pointed to this out after the game, the one thing that he did was he bounced back after each of those turnovers, after each of those big mistakes. He found a way to bounce back and make a huge play after that. That was the reason I believed in Jalen Milroe. I thought he was the answer, and we saw what happened in the USF game. Granted, it was rainy and heating. Here's the thing: Alabama should never be in a 14-point game with USF. Never, ever, ever, ever. I don't care where you play. The talent level is too good for that to be a close game. Now, tip your head to USF. They played their hearts out and they played as well as they probably have ever played in a long time. But Alabama should never be in that situation. They go back to Milroe and they never look back. Now, it wasn't pretty all the time. They found a way to beat Ole Miss in an ugly game. And then after that, it was you could slowly see Jalen Milroe building confidence. You could slowly see that he was learning what he is capable of doing. And you saw it all come full circle when they beat Tennessee and LSU in back-to-back weeks. They found ways to put up 34 points against Tennessee after seeming being lifeless in the first half. Then you find a way to contain Jayden Daniels and LSU. The Auburn game this past weekend was insane. Fact that Milroe was able to make that play is because of this entire season. It's proof that even when things are bad, it's another example. He didn't make a mistake. It was a bad snap, and they're in a tough position. He is in a tough situation. He is in a pressure-filled situation, and all he does is make a play. That's exactly what Jalen Milroe has done all year. He's been a resilient player. He got benched. He came back, and that's what you want from your quarterback. And in a game like this against one of the best teams in college football, uh, you need a guy like Jalen Milroe. You need him running the show because you know that if there's a play that needs to be made, your quarterback is going to make it. Now the defense has to do its part too. This is a defense that's been really fun. I think that it's been better than we anticipated. The guys like Dallas Turner have stepped up. The secondary has been really fun with Kool-Aid McKinstry and Terrion Arnold. Even Caleb Downs, the freshman, has been surprising. I think that this is an Alabama team that is very much capable of upsetting Georgia, and that's where if Georgia loses this game, if Alabama finds a way to win, that's when things get really, really crazy. I think it's going to get really difficult for the committee to keep Alabama out, and it's going to be really difficult for them to also keep Georgia out. When it comes to picking this game, Georgia is the more complete team. Georgia has everything they need to win this football game. And it comes down to not putting themselves in poor positions where they have to come back. Alabama's not necessarily in that same boat. Because you look at the Auburn game, it's a rivalry game, but you also put yourself in some tough spots that you had to dig out of. So to me, Georgia wins this game because they don't put themselves in tough situations. They find ways to be successful, and that's really all there is to it. They're putting themselves in good positions, and I think if they don't make mistakes, then they'll be just fine.